Let's have a look at safe navigation operator, which is a question mark followed by a dot. In order to understand what the safe navigation operator does, you need to understand the dot operator. So let's first take a look at the example where we have a class company defined with a couple of data members called name and address. In line number 6, we define an instance of that company. So Acme is the object of company class. And then on lines number 7 and 8, you can assign that Acme object to data members, the name and address. Now, if you've done all that, when you access the acme.name on line number 10 using the dot operator, it should be fine and it should print out the name of the company. What would happen if the Acme object itself was null, if the reference to the Acme object itself was null? That means you're referencing the name field of another object. This throws a null pointer exception and essentially breaks your code. What I mean is that if Acme was actually not an instance of the company class and you try to print acme.name, you're actually trying to access the name property of a null object. And that throws the null pointer exception and breaks your code. Now, the safe navigation operator is a way to avoid this. So if you use the safe navigation operator, it'll never throw the null pointer exception. In fact, this is the classic use case of using the safe navigation operator to avoid a null pointer exception. The safe navigation operator evaluates the first object, or the one on the left, which in my case is Acme. And if that turns out to be null, it does not evaluate the rest of the expression. So the name field will never be evaluated, and the entire expression will return a null. That basically means I will get a null value, but not the null pointer exception, so the code won't break. Let's take a look at this in our groovy web console. I've already got the class company there, and so far everything's alright. I'm accessing the acme.name, which should be fine. Let's execute the script. And this will happily print out the name of the company as Acme. Now, what happens if I remove the reference to the Acme variable, so it's not an instance of the company class anymore? When I try to execute the script, notice that I'm automatically on the stack trace, because I've received a null pointer exception. And this is exactly what we want to avoid, because it breaks your code. Any exception can break your code in the middle of execution. So if I had a safe navigation operator out here and execute my script, it will automatically switch back to the Output tab. As you see, my output says that the name of the company is null. To repeat, if the first operand is actually null, the whole expression returns a null, but not a null pointer exception. So this is the case where you would want to use the safe navigation operator to avoid a null pointer exception. This is how you can check if an object is null. Alright, another example. Let's say you're trying to access company.address.street.name. You know that there are 3 places where a null pointer exception can be thrown out here. If the street is null, the address is null, or the company is null. So in order to have this line execute properly, you will have an if statement checking whether the company, the address, or the street is null. If none of those is null, then you will eventually print out the name. Now this code can be compressed, simplified, and unified using the safe navigation operator very effectively. So we saw the safe navigation operator used at 3 places, and that the logic remains the same. If any of the objects on the left side of the operator become null, the whole expression will just return a null, but still not break, since it will not throw a null pointer exception.